In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Welcome to Journey to Jannah, where timeless wisdom meets the present day. Here we bring you audiobook-style biographies of the greatest minds in Islamic history, scholars, thinkers, and reformers who shaped the course of knowledge, faith, and civilization. From Imam Abu Hanifa to Ibn Sina, from al-Ghazali to Sayyid Qutb, each story is a journey through trials, triumphs, and unwavering dedication to the pursuit of truth. Sit back, reflect, and let your heart travel through centuries of Islamic heritage. One voice, one story, one lesson at a time. Subscribe now and begin your journey toward knowledge, inspiration, and Jannah, inshallah. Journey to Jannah, where knowledge lives. Awakening the Muslim world. The life of Jamal al-Din al-Afghani.
In the smoky cafes of Cairo, the bustling bazaars of Istanbul, and the quiet study rooms of Tehran, a restless spirit stirred the winds of change. The 19th century was a time of profound upheaval, a world where ancient empires tottered, the grip of colonial powers tightened, and the very identity of the Muslim world was questioned. Amidst this tumult, a man moved like a shadow and a flame, wielding words as weapons and ideas as sparks. His name was Jamal al-Din al-Afghani. Few figures in modern Islamic history have been as enigmatic, as compelling, or as influential as al-Afghani. He was a man of contradictions, claimed by many lands, embraced by none fully, a scholar and a revolutionary, a wanderer whose origins remain cloaked in mystery. His life was a ceaseless journey through the courts of rulers, the chambers of intellectuals, and the streets of cities where resistance simmered beneath colonial rule. To understand Jamal al-Din al-Afghani is to grasp the struggle of a civilization wrestling with the forces of modernity and imperialism. He challenged the complacency of the powerful and the despair of the oppressed, calling for unity among Muslims, revival of Islamic strength, and the pursuit of knowledge and justice. His vision was revolutionary, yet deeply rooted in faith, a synthesis of tradition and progress. But who was the man behind the legend? Where did he come from? What fires shaped his thoughts and propelled his relentless activism? This biography will travel back to a time when empires collided and ideas sparked revolutions, tracing the footsteps of a man who became both a beacon and a mystery in the Muslim world. As we open the pages of his life, prepare to encounter a story woven with intrigue, passion, and timeless questions about identity, power, and faith. This is the journey of Jamal al-Din al-Afghani, the activist, the thinker, the exile, the man who dared to dream of an awakened ummah.
Origins and early life, 1838-1855.
The wind swept cold across the rugged hills and dusty streets of a small village in the borderlands between Persia and Afghanistan. The year was 1838, though even this date was a matter of debate, much like the very place of his birth. Was he born in Khorasan, the ancient eastern province of Persia, or perhaps in the tribal lands of Afghanistan? Some whispered that he was born in Asadabad. Others claimed Herat. The uncertainty was fitting for a man whose life would become a tapestry of shifting identities and elusive truths. In a modest home, a boy named Jamal al-Din was born into a world of tradition and turmoil. His family lineage was said to connect to the Prophet's bloodline, a claim that would lend his words and mission a certain sacred weight. From a young age, Jamal al-Din showed a restless mind and an unyielding spirit. The dusty schoolhouses of his youth were where he first encountered the classical Islamic sciences, Quran, Hadith, logic, and philosophy, but also where the seeds of doubt and inquiry were planted. His early education was rigorous but traditional. Teachers praised his sharp intellect and his appetite for knowledge that reached beyond mere memorization. Stories circulated of a boy who questioned his masters, who argued fiercely over theology and politics, who saw the world not as a fixed order, but as a stage ripe for change. While others bowed to established authorities, Jamal al-Din's gaze was fixed on horizons far beyond his village. Yet the world around him was not still. The great empires of the Muslim world were trembling under the pressure of internal decay and European colonial expansion. Persia was caught in the crossfire of Russian and British ambitions, its rulers weak and divided. The Ottoman Empire, the so-called sick man of Europe, struggled to hold its vast territories together. And Egypt, under the ambitious Khedive Ismail, was striving to modernize and assert itself, while foreign powers lurked nearby. It was in this turbulent backdrop that Jamal al-Din's formative years unfolded, years marked by a growing sense of injustice and a burning desire for revival. He devoured the writings of earlier reformers and revolutionaries, from Islamic scholars calling for renewal to secular thinkers advocating Western sciences and governance. But he would not be satisfied with imitation. He sought a new synthesis, a path for his people that could defend their dignity and heritage without closing the door on progress. By the time he reached his late teens, Jamal al-Din was no longer content to remain confined within the narrow walls of his village or the limited scope of local debates. Whispers of his eloquence and fiery rhetoric had begun to spread. The boy who questioned his teachers was becoming a young man poised to challenge kings and empires. And so, with a heart full of resolve and a mind sharpened by both faith and reason, Jamal al-Din set out on a journey that would take him across lands and cultures, forever changing the course of Muslim political thought and resistance.
The Awakening, 1855-1870.
The mid-19th century was a world in flux. Empires were faltering, ideas were colliding, and young men with fire in their hearts dreamed of change. For Jamal al-Din al-Afghani, the boy who once questioned his teachers in a remote village, this was the moment to rise. By the time he reached his late teens, Jamal al-Din had left the narrow confines of his birthplace, seeking knowledge and purpose in the great cities of Persia. Tehran, with its palaces and power struggles, became the stage where his ideas first sparked controversy. The capital was a place of intrigue, where traditional clerics and modern thinkers clashed in a delicate dance, where the question of Persia's future was debated behind closed doors and in crowded coffee houses. Al-Afghani was not merely a scholar, but a man driven by vision and urgency. He recognized that the Muslim world faced immense challenges, not only from external powers, but also from within, due to intellectual stagnation and political weakness. Disturbed by the decline in learning, the disunity among Muslim communities, and the lack of effective leadership, he began to shape a powerful idea: pan-Islamic unity. This was not about idealizing the past, but a forward-looking call for solidarity. He believed that Islam held timeless principles that could inspire reform, promote knowledge, and encourage independence in the face of growing global pressures. His fiery sermons and writings soon caught the attention of both admirers and enemies. In 1866, a particularly bold article criticized the Persian government for its corruption and blind imitation of European customs. The reaction was swift and severe. Al-Afghani was arrested and accused of stirring sedition, but even imprisonment failed to silence him. If anything, it sharpened his resolve. Upon release, he fled Persia for India, a land that held its own complexities and contradictions under British colonial rule. In the vibrant cities of Calcutta and Bombay, al-Afghani mingled with scholars, political activists, and reformers from across the Muslim world. The British Raj, with all its might and oppression, also exposed him to Western sciences, political philosophies, and revolutionary ideas. Here, he expanded his intellectual arsenal, blending Islamic principles with the lessons of modernity. It was also in India that al-Afghani began to sharpen his skills as an orator and political strategist. His speeches called on Muslims to awaken from their slumber, to reject sectarian divides, and to unite against colonial powers. He denounced blind imitation of the West, but urged selective adoption of its sciences and governance methods. This period marked a turning point. No longer was al-Afghani just a critic. He was becoming a leader and a symbol, a voice echoing across continents, urging a forgotten people to remember their dignity and power. But his growing reputation also made him a target. Forced to leave India under British pressure, al-Afghani's restless spirit pushed him onward, to the heart of the Ottoman Empire, to the crossroads of East and West, where his ideas would face new challenges and greater opportunities.
The Egyptian years and political engagement, 1871–1882.
The heat of Cairo in the early 1870s was thick with possibility and tension. Egypt, a land rich with history, stood at a crossroads. Under the ambitious rule of Khedive Ismail, the country sought to modernize, to cast off the shackles of Ottoman rule, and to claim a place among the world's powers. But beneath the glittering facade of progress lay debt, foreign interference, and simmering discontent. Into this complex arena stepped Jamal al-Din al-Afghani, a man whose reputation as a fiery reformer and fierce opponent of colonialism had preceded him. He arrived with little more than his intellect, his conviction, and a vision to awaken the Muslim world, beginning with Egypt, to its potential and power. Al-Afghani soon found an influential supporter in Khedive Ismail. The ruler, determined to modernize Egypt while maintaining its independence, was drawn to al-Afghani's passionate vision. Their discussions were filled with lively exchange and mutual interest. Al-Afghani encouraged the Khedive to foster unity among Muslim nations and to be cautious of growing foreign involvement in Egyptian affairs. But al-Afghani was not content to remain behind palace walls. Through his public talks in mosques and intellectual gatherings in cafes, he challenged the status quo, speaking out against social injustice and urging the people of Egypt to pursue education, scientific advancement, and civic engagement, not as imitation of others, but as a path to restoring confidence and progress within their own. During this time, al-Afghani also formed a close partnership with Muhammad Abduh, a fellow reformer whose calm rationality complemented al-Afghani's fiery passion. Together, they worked to revive Islamic thought, emphasizing reason alongside faith, and urging a reinterpretation of Islamic law to meet modern challenges. But political change is rarely peaceful. Egypt was a powder keg of grievances. The common people suffered under heavy taxation, the military resented foreign officers, and nationalist sentiments swelled. Al-Afghani became an outspoken supporter of the Urabi Revolt, a popular uprising led by Colonel Ahmed Urabi aimed at ending foreign control and corrupt rule. His speeches gave voice to the frustrations of many. He called for Egyptian independence, the unity of Muslims, and resistance to imperialism. But the revolt, despite its promise, was crushed in 1882 by a British invasion. The hopes of reform were dashed under the weight of foreign guns. In the aftermath, al-Afghani found himself forced to flee Egypt, branded a revolutionary and agitator. His exile was bitter, but his spirit remained unbroken. The flame he had ignited in Egypt would spread, carried by his travels and teachings to other parts of the Muslim world. As he left Cairo behind, al-Afghani's mind was already turning toward new horizons. His battle was far from over. The fight for Muslim unity, independence, and revival was a long road, one that he was determined to walk to its very end.
Travels and influence across the Muslim world, 1880-1897.
Exile was both a curse and a calling. For Jamal al-Din al-Afghani, the forced departure from Egypt did not silence his voice. It only widened his stage, from the sun-baked streets of Cairo to the ancient corridors of Istanbul, from the intellectual salons of Paris to the bustling cities of India. Al-Afghani's journey became a restless quest to unite the Muslim world under the banner of renewal and resistance. The Ottoman Empire, though weakened and struggling, was still a symbolic heartland of Islam. In Istanbul, al-Afghani found both opportunity and frustration. He mingled with Ottoman intellectuals and reformers eager to save their empire from collapse. His passionate speeches stirred feelings of pride and renewal, calling on both the Sultan and the wider public to awaken and stand together for their future. Yet the Ottoman court remained cautious, often uneasy with the boldness of his ideas. From Istanbul, al-Afghani journeyed onward, to India and later to Europe. Each destination became both a learning ground and a platform for advocacy. In British India, he engaged with Muslim thinkers and social reformers, sharing his vision of unity and cooperation among Muslim societies. His message resonated with many, even as authorities kept a close eye on his movements and influence. In Paris and London, al-Afghani faced a different kind of challenge: the Western intellectual elite. Here, he engaged in heated debates with European thinkers, defending Islam's place in the modern world while exposing the hypocrisies of colonialism. His charismatic presence and sharp intellect earned him respect, even among those who disagreed with him. Throughout these travels, al-Afghani's writings grew bolder and more influential. He published articles and pamphlets calling for a revival of Islamic sciences, political reform, and the rejection of sectarian divisions that weakened Muslim solidarity. His vision was not just religious, but deeply political. A united ummah, empowered by knowledge, standing against the tide of Western imperialism. Yet, the man himself remained enigmatic. His true origins continued to puzzle friends and foes alike. Some suspected he was Persian, others claimed Afghan descent. He used multiple names, weaving a complex identity that defied easy classification. Perhaps this was part of his strategy, a way to transcend borders and unite diverse peoples under a common cause. Despite the hardships of exile and the constant threat of surveillance, Jamal al-Din al-Afghani's impact was undeniable. He was a catalyst, igniting debates, inspiring reformers, and challenging the complacency of rulers. His calls for pan-Islamism planted seeds that would grow long after his death, influencing movements from the Ottoman Young Turks to the leaders of anti-colonial struggles across Asia and Africa. In 1897, after a lifetime spent in ceaseless struggle, Jamal al-Din al-Afghani's journey came to an end. But the fire he lit continued to burn, a beacon for those who sought to reconcile faith, modernity, and freedom.
Legacy and lasting impact.
When Jamal al-Din al-Afghani breathed his last breath in 1897, he left behind no grand empire, no throne to inherit, no wealth amassed. What remained was far more enduring: a legacy of ideas, a movement of thought, and a call to action that transcended borders and generations. His life, marked by exile and struggle, was the story of a man who dared to confront the greatest challenges facing the Muslim world. He was a prophet of awakening, warning against the dangers of complacency and division, urging a revival rooted in both faith and reason. Al-Afghani's vision of pan-Islamism sowed the seeds of political unity among Muslims that would inspire future nationalist and anti-colonial movements. His insistence on education, science, and political reform challenged traditionalist stagnation and inspired modernist thinkers like Muhammad Abduh and Rashid Rida, who carried his torch into the 20th century. Yet, his legacy was not without controversy. His methods, sometimes secretive, always provocative, alienated some contemporaries. Questions about his true origins and shifting allegiances added to the mystique and the debates that still surround his life. Was he a nationalist, a pan-Islamist, a revolutionary, or all of these? The answer remains as complex as the man himself. More than a century later, Jamal al-Din al-Afghani's ideas continue to resonate in discussions about identity, reform, and resistance in the Muslim world. He remains a symbol of intellectual courage, a reminder that faith and modernity need not be enemies, but can combine to forge a path toward dignity and justice. In the end, al-Afghani was not just a man of his time, he was a timeless figure. His story invites us to reflect on the power of ideas to challenge empires, to awaken societies, and to shape history. His journey, with all its contradictions and complexities, stands as a testament to the enduring struggle for a world where belief and reason walk hand in hand.
The Grand Mufti and legacy.
Upon his return to Egypt, Muhammad Abduh's stature as a leading reformer was undeniable. In 1899, he was appointed Grand Mufti of Egypt, a position that placed him at the pinnacle of religious authority in the country. This role was both an honor and a heavy responsibility, for it demanded balancing the weight of centuries-old tradition with the urgent need for renewal. As Grand Mufti, Abduh sought to embody his vision of an Islam enlightened by reason, justice, and compassion. He issued fatwas that reflected flexibility and mercy, encouraging interpretations of Islamic law that addressed contemporary social issues. He championed education for all Muslims, believing that ignorance was the greatest obstacle to progress. Under his guidance, Egypt's religious institutions began embracing modern sciences alongside traditional religious studies. He pushed for reforms in the judicial system to ensure fairness and accountability. Abduh was not merely a religious figure, he was a social reformer who sought to uplift his people intellectually, morally, and politically. His writings and lectures reached far beyond Egypt's borders, inspiring a generation of Muslim thinkers from the Middle East to South Asia. Abduh's ideas laid the groundwork for modern Islamic thought, emphasizing that faith and reason could coexist harmoniously. Despite his significant achievements, Abduh remained humble and devoted to his faith until his final days. He continued to write, teach, and engage in public discourse, never ceasing in his quest to reconcile tradition with modernity. In 1905, Muhammad Abduh passed away in Alexandria, Egypt, at the age of 56. His death was mourned by many, but his legacy lived on. In the reform movements he inspired, in the scholars who carried forward his ideas, and in the ongoing struggle within the Muslim world to find a path that honored both faith and reason. Muhammad Abduh's life was a testament to the power of intellectual courage and spiritual renewal. He showed that Islam, far from being static or reactionary, could be a dynamic force for enlightenment and justice in a rapidly changing world.
The ripple effect. Abduh's enduring influence.
Muhammad Abduh's passing in 1905 did not mark the end of his mission. Rather, it was the beginning of a legacy that would ripple across the Muslim world for decades to come. His vision for reform, anchored in reason, education, and spiritual revival, became a beacon for countless scholars, activists, and leaders seeking to reconcile Islamic tradition with the demands of modern life. Among those deeply influenced by Abdu was his own student and successor, Rashid Rida, who carried forward his teacher's calls for ijtihad, independent reasoning, and the renewal of Islamic thought. Rida's writings and activism helped spread reformist ideas to places as diverse as Syria, Lebanon, and the Arabian Peninsula. In Egypt, Abdu's efforts contributed to the modernization of religious education and judicial practices, setting the stage for ongoing debates about the role of Islam in governance, law, and society. His approach inspired movements that sought to empower Muslims through knowledge rather than mere ritual. Beyond Egypt, the echoes of Abdu's philosophy reached South Asia, where reformers like Sir Syed Ahmad Khan and later scholars looked to harmonize Islamic teachings with Western sciences and political ideas. In the broader Arab world, his emphasis on justice and rational inquiry influenced nationalist and religious thinkers grappling with colonialism and identity. Today, Muhammad Abdu's legacy remains alive in the continuing efforts to reinterpret Islamic law in light of contemporary challenges, whether in questions of human rights, education, or governance. His belief that Islam is compatible with modernity and that true faith encourages critical thought and social justice continues to inspire reformers across the globe. Yet, his journey also serves as a reminder of the difficulties inherent in change. The tensions between tradition and innovation, faith and reason remain alive in many societies. Abdu's life encourages courage in questioning, humility in learning, and compassion in leadership. As the Nile flows unceasingly past the land that once nurtured him, so too flows the influence of Muhammad Abdu, an enduring current of enlightenment, challenging and inspiring those who seek a path of wisdom, justice, and renewal.
The challenges of modernity and the quest for balance.
At the dawn of the 20th century, the Muslim world found itself at a crossroads like never before. The forces of colonialism, scientific advancement, and political upheaval swept across centuries-old societies, demanding urgent responses. Muhammad Abdu stood at the heart of this transformation, his reformist vision both a beacon of hope and a source of controversy. Abdu recognized that the challenges were not merely external. Deep within Muslim communities, rigid interpretations of faith and a reluctance to engage with modern knowledge threatened to imprison societies in stagnation. For Abdu, reform was not about discarding tradition, but reinterpreting it with fresh eyes, emphasizing the spirit rather than the letter of the law. At the dawn of the 20th century, the Muslim world found itself at a crossroads like never before. The forces of colonialism, scientific advancement, and political upheaval swept across centuries-old societies, demanding urgent responses. Muhammad Abdu stood at the heart of this transformation, his reformist vision both a beacon of hope and a source of controversy. Abdu recognized that the challenges were not merely external. Deep within Muslim communities, rigid interpretations of faith and a reluctance to engage with modern knowledge threatened to imprison societies in stagnation. For Abdu, reform was not about discarding tradition, but reinterpreting it with fresh eyes, emphasizing the spirit rather than the letter of the law. He grappled with questions that troubled many. How could Islamic law accommodate the rapid changes in science, economics, and governance? How could Muslims reclaim dignity and independence without losing their identity? Could reason and revelation walk hand in hand? Abdu argued passionately that Islam's principles were fundamentally compatible with reason and progress. He pointed to the Quran's encouragement of inquiry and justice as evidence that blind imitation was not the path forward. Instead, he urged a dynamic ijtihad, independent reasoning, to extract the timeless wisdom within Islamic teachings and apply it to new realities. But this path was fraught with obstacles. Conservative clerics accused him of diluting sacred traditions, while colonial powers exploited divisions to maintain control. Abdu's emphasis on education and critical thinking threatened entrenched elites who benefited from maintaining the status quo. Yet Abdu remained steadfast. He tirelessly wrote, taught, and counseled leaders, seeking a balanced approach that honored faith while embracing the necessities of modern governance, law, and social reform. His efforts laid a foundation that would inspire later Islamic modernists and reformers in the 20th century and beyond. Thinkers who continued to wrestle with the delicate balance between heritage and innovation. Through his life and work, Muhammad Abdu illuminated a crucial truth: that the future of Islam and its followers depended not on rigid dogma, but on the courage to engage with change thoughtfully, compassionately, and wisely.
The personal life of Muhammad Abdu.
Behind the scholarly robes and the powerful sermons stood a man whose life was shaped by personal trials, quiet devotion, and a profound sense of responsibility. Muhammad Abdu's public achievements often overshadow the intimate details that made him human. His family ties, his moments of doubt, and the simple joys and struggles that accompanied his mission. Born into a modest family in the Nile Delta village of Mahalat Duru, Abdu was nurtured by parents who valued education and faith. Though the family was not wealthy, their commitment to learning and spirituality set the foundation for his later pursuits. The young Muhammad was known for his curiosity and seriousness, traits that would follow him throughout life. He grappled with questions that troubled many. How could Islamic law accommodate the rapid changes in science, economics, and governance? How could Muslims reclaim dignity and independence without losing their identity? Could reason and revelation walk hand in hand? Abdu argued passionately that Islam's principles were fundamentally compatible with reason and progress. He pointed to the Quran's encouragement of inquiry and justice as evidence that blind imitation was not the path forward. Instead, he urged a dynamic ijtihad, independent reasoning, to extract the timeless wisdom within Islamic teachings and apply it to new realities. Spiritually, Abdu was deeply devoted. Prayer, meditation, and reflection sustained him through dark moments of opposition and loneliness. His writings reveal a man who sought not only to reform society, but to perfect himself, wrestling with the challenges of faith, doubt, and hope. Friends and colleagues remembered him as humble, approachable, and compassionate, a scholar who, despite his stature, never lost sight of the common man's struggles. His dedication to justice and education extended beyond theory into tangible acts of kindness and mentorship. In the quiet hours away from public life, Muhammad Abdu was a thinker and a believer, a man who carried the weight of a civilization's hopes on his shoulders, yet remained grounded by the love of family, faith, and the pursuit of knowledge.
The writings and intellectual legacy.
Muhammad Abdu's pen was a sword and a lantern, cutting through centuries of stagnation and illuminating a path toward renewal. His writings were not merely academic treatises, they were calls to action, invitations to rethink faith and society in a world rapidly shifting beneath Muslim feet. From theological essays to legal opinions, fatwas, Abdu's works embodied his reformist vision. One of his most influential contributions was his emphasis on ijtihad, the use of independent reasoning in interpreting Islamic law. At a time when many scholars adhered rigidly to precedent, Abdu argued that Islam's legal tradition was meant to be flexible, adaptable to changing circumstances. His commentary on the Quran sought to reconcile traditional exegesis with modern knowledge, highlighting the spirit of justice, compassion, and rational inquiry at the heart of the sacred text. He stressed that the Quran encouraged the use of reason and observation, inviting believers to engage with the natural world and intellectual challenges. Abdu's essays on education were equally transformative. He argued that Muslims must embrace both religious and secular knowledge to overcome backwardness and colonial subjugation. His calls for educational reform influenced the modernization of Egypt's schools and universities, promoting curricula that included sciences, languages, and critical thinking alongside religious studies. His legal fatwas addressed contemporary social issues such as women's rights, governance, and economic justice, with an emphasis on moral principles rather than strict literalism. He sought to humanize the law, making it a tool for societal welfare. Though some criticized his views as too radical or too accommodating to Western ideas, Abdu's writings sparked debate and inspired a generation of thinkers who would carry the torch of Islamic modernism well into the 20th century. Today, scholars continue to study his works, finding in them a rich source of intellectual courage and spiritual depth. His legacy endures not only in the texts he left behind, but in the ongoing quest among Muslims to harmonize tradition with modernity, faith with reason.
The broader impact on Muslim societies.
Muhammad Abdu's reformist vision transcended borders, stirring the minds and hearts of Muslims across continents. His ideas became a cornerstone for many movements seeking to rejuvenate Islamic identity in an age of colonization, modernization, and political upheaval. In the Arab world, Abdu's teachings inspired a wave of intellectual awakening. Thinkers and activists from Lebanon to North Africa drew upon his calls for educational reform, legal flexibility, and social justice. His emphasis on ijtihad encouraged local scholars to revisit Islamic law and adapt it to contemporary realities, fostering dynamic interpretations that challenged rigid orthodoxy. His influence reached the Indian subcontinent, where reformers like Sir Syed Ahmad Khan and later the Aligarh movement embraced similar ideals. These leaders promoted the integration of Western sciences with Islamic education, aiming to uplift Muslim communities politically and socially within British-ruled India. In the Ottoman Empire and later Turkey, the spirit of Abdu's modernism mingled with local reform efforts, contributing to debates on constitutionalism, secularism, and national identity. Although not directly involved, his ideas formed part of the intellectual background for thinkers grappling with how Islam could coexist with emerging nation-states. Beyond scholarly circles, Abdu's call for justice, education, and reason contributed to broader social developments, including support for women's learning and efforts to modernize legal institutions. His legacy brought renewed hope to communities navigating challenges under foreign rule, presenting Islam as a source of strength, progress, and renewal. However, not all received his ideas warmly. Some traditional scholars voiced concerns about change, fearing it might unsettle long-held practices. Political leaders, too, were at times hesitant, cautious of the potential impact such reforms could have on the social order. Yet, the enduring power of Muhammad Abdu's thought lies in its adaptability and appeal to the quest for dignity, knowledge, and progress. His legacy continues to resonate, echoing in the ongoing efforts of Muslim societies to navigate the challenges of the modern world while honoring their faith.
Reflections on Muhammad Abduh's vision in today's world.
More than a century after his passing, Muhammad Abduh's voice still reverberates through the corridors of Islamic thought, inviting new generations to engage with his vision of reform, reason, and faith. In today's complex global landscape, his ideas continue to challenge Muslims to reconcile tradition with modernity in ways both thoughtful and courageous. The questions Abduh posed remain urgent. How can Islam respond to rapid technological change, political upheaval, and social transformation? How can faith uphold justice and human dignity in diverse societies? His call for ijtihad encourages Muslims worldwide to rethink inherited interpretations, fostering dialogue and innovation rather than rigid literalism. In an era marked by ideological polarization, Abduh's emphasis on compassion, education, and rational inquiry offers a path toward unity and progress. His insistence that Islam embraces science and reason counters narratives that portray faith as incompatible with modern knowledge. Yet, embracing Abduh's vision is no simple task. Societies continue to wrestle with tensions between conservatism and reform, secularism and religiosity, globalization and local identity. His legacy challenges scholars, leaders, and communities to cultivate balance, respecting tradition while boldly engaging the demands of the present. Educational institutions inspired by Abduh's reformist spirit strive to equip young Muslims with the tools to navigate this balance, integrating faith and critical thinking. Meanwhile, movements advocating for social justice, gender equity, and human rights draw upon his principles of compassion and justice. Muhammad Abduh's life and work serve as a timeless reminder that the renewal of faith is not a rejection of the past, but a dynamic process of interpretation and application. His enduring message calls for thoughtful courage, the courage to question, to learn, and to act with wisdom and kindness in a changing world. As Muslims continue their journey into the 21st century, Abduh's vision remains a guiding light, urging a harmonious blend of faith and reason that honors the rich heritage of Islam while embracing the promise of the future.
Alhamdulillah for joining us on this journey through the life of one of Islam's great scholars. We hope this story inspired your heart and deepened your connection with the rich legacy of Islamic knowledge. If you found benefit in today's episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Journey to Jannah, your home for Islamic biographies, wisdom, and timeless guidance. New episodes are uploaded regularly, so turn on the notification bell to never miss a moment of insight. May Allah increase us all in beneficial knowledge and guide us on the path of the righteous. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.